So your focus on U2s is amazing. The Dragon Lady, you started very early to collect research and data. Your information on Taiwan is just lost now, probably. But in your books, you got photographs. I don't know how you got these photographs of these old CIA photographs and pilots and the people who didn't come back, the Chinese pilots here, the Taiwan pilots that flew the U-2s into China. Something like 20, 20 pilots were trained, right? And roughly 220, was it, flights?
It
And
was more than
five,
20 pilots because this operation went on between 1962 and 1974. Um,
right.
and to answer your question, you just accumulate. You start with someone, they send you on to someone else. You take your camera with you. You go to their houses. You look through their photo albums. Um,
Wow.
and then other
Yeah.
people send you pictures. It's just an accumulation.
But this is largely before the internet. I mean, you did
Uh,
this boots on the ground, right?
well, yes, you wouldn't find most of those photographs online. You might find some of them, um,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, the internet was around when I started all this back in the late 80s. But no, most of this has been done through personal contacts.
So you built this like an old-fashioned journalist to meet people, talk to them, get to know them, make friendships, build relationships, and get insider knowledge about what was originally secret missions. And
Yeah,
you're probably the only one I know who's done such a thing.
well,
Classified stuff.
yeah, well, I mean, it's I'm more just let's just say I'm more diligent than others. There's a few other there's a few other people out there that have written YouTube
Well,
books and follow the
yeah.
airplane.
Well,
And
there's yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, as for classification, um, well, yeah, people have told me classified stuff over the years, but they've taken the view that so many years have passed that it really doesn't matter anymore.
No.
And also, when I started, it was just at the end of the Cold War. So there was a lot of declassification coming in the 1990s and
Right.
the subsequent decades.
Now, how many U-2s got shot down in China?
Five.
And three, I mean, three of the pilots survived, right? Two
No,
died.
two of the pilots survived. The other
All
three
right.
were killed.
All right. And they have these in the museums in China, right? The planes,
Yeah,
the
they collected the pieces and put them back together. They put four of them on display in a grand display in Beijing in front of the Hall of the People in around about let me see, 1965. In the end, those pieces got dispersed. There's a nice reconstruction of pieces. The major display now is in the
right.
military museum in Beijing, but actually you you can find little pieces of U2 scattered all over the country in different museums and technical institutes.
All right. How bizarre. They shouldn't have taken them apart like that. They should have tried to keep it all together.
Well, I mean, they were apart because they were shot down. None of them landed intact.
So you went to see them,
I've seen the one in Beijing and
right?
few of the pieces uh, around Beijing, but
Right.
I've just been told about others in Shanghai and Nanjing and so on.
Did you interview the survivors?
Yes, I did, and that if you've got time, that's a really interesting story that I'm very proud of. Right at the beginning of my research, before I wrote my first book, I had started making contacts, uh, including with CIA, and I should explain that that Taiwan operation was kind of a joint venture between the CIA and the Republic of China Air Force on Taiwan. And they led me to the two pilots who had been shot down because they were living in the States. And CIA had set them up with jobs. And the reason they were in the States was that after 20 years in the hands of the PRC, they had been released to Hong Kong.
Right.
And they contacted Taiwan and to get permission to come back, and Taiwan refused to have them back.
The office there in Hong Kong said we don't know. We don't know.
Hong Kong was fine, but Taiwan didn't want them back, and that's in itself is a story. But so
Oh my
one of the
God.
pilots, one of the former American instructor pilots, found out about this and got them into the States. I got to talk to them before I published my first book, and so I published this story, and not very long after, I got a call from the New York rep and editor for Linking Publishing, major publisher of books and newspapers on Taiwan. And he said to me, "We really don't know this story, and we want to republish a book and tell people about it." So I gave him permission to republish the book in Chinese, which happened
Right.
in
I've seen it
1990.
here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that because they owned a daily newspaper, they also made a campaign about this. It was sort of "Bring Our Boys Home,"
Yeah.
and and that lasted a couple of months, and then kind of obliged the then defense minister to stand up in the Diet and say, "Well, all right, they can come home," which they duly did. So I was very proud of that.
I think I was in Hong Kong what year was that? When they
Oh
came over the
gosh,
bridge.
85,
Okay.
84.
I heard about it in 1990 when I was in Hong Kong. This crazy story, and I couldn't believe it that the Taiwanese wouldn't take them back.
That was to do with Chang Ching Kuo and his attitude and his the suspicion that if they've been in captivity too long, they've been turned, and it's a propaganda exercise by the Chi Coms. That kind of attitude.
No question that there was a lot of paranoia in the KMT back then as well. Yeah. Your what is it about the spooky world of espionage, surveillance planes, particularly, that attracts you? I mean, not
Well,
everybody you meet is interested in stuff like this.
yeah, sure. Well, I'm just one of those inquisitive journalists, just like you.
Hmm.
Um, you've done your
Thank
fair
you.
share. You've done
I've
your fair share of
tried,
delving into this world.
tried, just
But
nowhere
really, I
near
was,
you.
I was an aerospace journalist, and anyway, and it was the U2 that led me into some other areas, because I started specializing in the U2 and realized there's a whole lot more out there in the world of not only spy planes, but the whole business of intelligence gathering and processing and analysis and dissemination.
Right. I got onto you actually before we had met because of the book. What was it called? William Leary's book on perilous missions.
Missions, yes.
Yeah, the CIA's operations, not just in civil air transport was the CIA's airline slash covert operational, um, and they operated out of Taiwan, Vietnam, everywhere. And that guy was getting ready to do a book on Air America, but he died apparently. But that's how I learned about you is reading that book and thinking, what else is out there? And I found out about you, and I go, wow, this is great stuff. But I really wish that he had lived, and I know his archives. They archived his stuff at the University of Texas or something.
Yeah, that is the Air America archive. Um,
Yeah, I mean that material should be put together into an Air America book because no offense, well, I guess I should have found the Air America book written, you know, 30,
by
30 years ago.
Christopher, by Christopher Robbins, another Brit.
Yeah, yeah. But he keeps rewriting it, changing things, and each edition has got different stuff in it. And it just, I don't know which edition to buy anymore. Um,
Mm.
his book Ravens was better. Robin's book on Ravens was much better. And that was another CIA operation in Laos.
Mm. Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, did you meet Robbins? I assume you have.
No, no, I haven't. Never met him.
No, okay. See, I assume, like many people, that we all know each other somehow. I never
Well,
met him
yeah.
either.
I don't know why I've never met him. I've never sought him out. He's never sought me out.
Right.
Um,
I know that Air America sued him when his book first came out. But they lost or something happened. I don't know. But and then Leary, how about Leary? Did you meet Leary at all?
no, no.
Correspondent or anything? Or
Um, you know, I concentrated on the U2,
right,
um, well, throughout really, but I really didn't get into some of the territory that you're talking about now with those two authors
right,
till I became more aware of the Black Bats, the analog, if you like, to the U2 squadron, the Black Cats.
right.
And for the listeners, the Black Cats was the U2 squadron. They did high altitude imaging,
Hmm.
graphic intelligence. The Black Bats was another Taiwan CIA collaboration, but they flew at night with converted transports and maritime
Yeah,
patrol. And
anything that
their,
flew.
yeah, and their mission was uh, varied. It was signals intelligence. It was dropping leaflets. It was dropping agents, and their origins were in the early 50s with civil air transport.
Right,
So in my Black Bats book, I trace that back to the the origins of the squadron before it became a full up squadron.
right. Okay. Because the relationship between Soviet transport and black bats always confused me. CAT was the CIA's airline before it became Air America in 1961, I think, right?
Yeah, but the
Um,
Black Bats took over some aspects of civil air transport's mission, and some of the pilots came from CAT and the CIA side in Taiwan. You had veterans of CAT that then got enlisted for the Black Bat Squadron, and that
right,
book I've been researching and writing about the U2 for 20 years before the Black Bats book was published.
right. And did you made a another movie or something, a documentary, right? In here in Taiwan, right? On
Well,
the
I didn't. I was uh, invited to be a consultant
oh, okay,
in a movie called The Lost Black Cats, which was about those two pilots we were
right,
talking about earlier. But
yeah,
that was more recently. That was around about 2017, and a very good job they made of it.
hmm,
The director of that, director Yang, Jonathan Yang, really did a great job, and he actually got sort of seduced into this world and this story, and
yeah.
he really went the extra mile. I thoroughly recommend that. It's got English subtitles. The Lost Black.
Yeah, this is a world when you do anything like historical intelligence studies like this, it is a world that really does kind of just suck you right in. I mean, it's
Mm,
not normal. It's not normal, and it's interesting. Everyone is interesting. They're not. Nobody's boring in these
yeah,
books.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, yes, I'm gonna post your book for everyone to see as well. I recommend
You
everyone
know,
read these books.
in a way, I'm more proud of the Black Bats book than I am
Yeah,
of the U2 books because it needed a lot of extra research and with no cooperation from the CIA in terms of official documents. Um,
yeah.
and
I wouldn't think they
wait,
would have very much, but I don't
well,
know.
they do, but unlike the Black Cat Squadron, it was part of the covert side of the CIA, not the science and technology division of the CIA, and the covert side, the DDP plans that became the DDO operations. They take an entirely different view to declassification, and they hardly want to declassify anything. So all their records on the Black Bats are uh, remain classified.
Mm,
The way that book came about was my Taiwan co-author Clarence Fu.
great guy.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
Fu Jingping. He interviewed a bunch of those pilots and navigators, mission planners, and he wrote a book first in Taiwan in Chinese, and then
Hmm.
I collaborated with him, and I did all the CIA interviews in the States, put together what I could from open sources there, had some great cooperation from CIA veterans because despite the lack of classification, they were so proud of their part in that they were very happy to open up. And then we lucked out because we got the official Taiwan records of every flight. And
Really? Oh my
yeah,
God.
and so that really made the book authoritative to the
So,
extent that the CIA's journal, their unclassified journal, which you will know studies in intelligence, actually reviewed that book and said it was, they gave it a very favorable review. So the Black Bats, I'm very proud of that book.
I can tell that you are, and I love the book, and I recommended it to people that didn't know it existed, and they jump all over it. The is it a paperback yet? I mean, it really
No,
needs to
no, it's
be
just
made.
fine, just fine.
It should be a mass-produced, easy to get.
It's a niche.
It's a
It's a niche.
niche. It's a niche, and I got a free copy for review and a signed copy. Yeah, so thank you so much. The uh, the issue regarding these characters, these pilots, uh, like Air America Silver Transport CI flown, right? They were flown by Americans, but in the Black Bats, they were flown by Taiwanese, right?
Oh yeah, the
Okay, that's where the
Americans.
division was.
Yeah, there was a seminal incident where a C-47 flown by Americans was shot down, and it was compromised. It was dropping agents, and the mainland side knew where that would be, so it
Right.
was shut down. And those two pilots were captured and held in on the mainland for many years. And after that, the
Are you talking
Americans decided
about Downey and
down the
Fecteau?
infecto. Yeah,
Though they,
yeah.
they were the CIA agents. I think the pilots died in the fire,
Oh yes, yeah, that's
hydraulic
right. Yeah,
fire.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I spoke to Snotty's, the pilot's sister. She's gone now, but she gave me the
yeah,
whole thing. She gave me the whole story.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and Fecteau was I never knew what happened to him later, but Downey became a lawyer and a judge, and
Mm,
he,
mm.
yeah, and they wrote a book with his son. His son wrote a book about with somebody
Yeah, that's
else
right.
help.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So anyway,
yeah,
after that incident, the CIA decided let's not risk any more American lives if the Taiwanese are prepared to do this. And of course, Chiang Kai-shek was only too happy to collaborate. And so
mm,
yeah, all of the Black Bats flights over the mainland and the Black Cats
mm.
U-2 flights were flown by Taiwan pilots.
Now the Taiwan agents that were being parachuted into China were supposed to go back and set up radios and set up guerrilla operations, or go back to their old villages or something, and then try to ingratiate themselves into the local communities. They were all captured, right, for the most part.
Well, you might know more as much as I do about that, but
Yeah,
as far
I
as
pretty
I
much
know,
all
it
of
was
them.
almost total failure.
Total disaster. Yeah. Yeah, they didn't come back. That was one of the few programs where they were actually going to try to use the Hook program, where they flew in a harness and a balloon, and they would pick up the agent, and
Mm.
that, and the tests were like, ripping the dummies' heads off, and complete disaster. Uh,
Mm.
but your journey into journalism is very unusual as well. I mean, you're staff correspondent or a freelance and staff. People don't understand the difference between those two. And if you don't understand that, you really, the folks that read my stuff for Jane's, for example, Jane's had such a high reputation that the reader must have thought that we were all like staff
Mm.
correspondents
Yeah.
treated
Mm.
with, and we were not. We were all freelance stringers. Um, so I thought the reader was being, cheated in some ways, or at least, you know, I just don't like the way stringers are treated by these big magazines, and not just Jane's or any of the other military magazines, but other publications. But you never had a problem getting staff via freelance that never.
Well, no, I mean, I was never on the payroll of AIN, Aviation International News. But the difference between AIN and Defense News or Jane's is that AIN has always been family owned. It's been owned by the fame. Well, it's never been a public company. It's always been owned. It was started by two guys, a veteran P-38 pilot from the Second World War, another fellow who was the business side of the house. That's Wilson Leach. And it was when Jim Holohan, the old guy, died, Wilson took over the company, and he and his family still own and run it to this day. So, you developed a personal relationship with these people, and
Hmm.
so although I was never on their payroll, I was always certain that they would want to use me for the big air shows,
Oh yeah,
and then as the internet developed for a weekly newsletter on defense.
great. You went to Zhuhai, didn't you? The big China Air Show. Have you been to
No,
that?
no, no, I've never been there.
Why
I've
not?
probably been put off by your stories from
Well,
there,
yeah.
but no.
Everybody's afraid to go back now. All the defense correspondents are like terrified to go back
Well,
because
yes, I can imagine.
we're afraid we'll be arrested.
Yeah,
Uh,
circumstances, I think. I've been to China a couple of times, but just circumstances. AIN didn't particularly want coverage of that. They certainly didn't want to publish on site there like they did at the other major shows.
right, show coverage reports, every dailies they call them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
daily.
those are a headache because you couldn't really go out and talk to anybody. You had to do one story and maybe two stories, and you didn't get to mingle with the other defense exhibitors, which is
Well,
extremely important.
yeah, that's true, but I always made it a point to stay on when we'd finished our last edition to try and do a bit of that on the last
Hmm.
couple of days of the show.
What is the craziest air show in Asia and the Middle East that you've been to?
Oh,
The one that you swear you'll never go back to. I have
there
I have my personal favorite, but
I really don't have one. I've been to air shows in Thailand, Singapore, Taiwan,
all right.
Dubai. No, I mean a couple of them stand out for good reasons.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no, I can't think of a bad one.
How about Bangalore?
No, well, you see, I've never been there.
Oh, Oh man, yeah. The India Air Show is
Mm.
yeah, that place that air show is the one place I thought I was certainly going to die. Uh it's terrifying. But yeah, when we go to these air shows and defense expos, we're all the same journalists and we all know each other. And what's interesting to the reader may not understand or listener is that we often get bounced from magazine to magazine to magazine. So it's not unusual to go from Aviation Week to Jane's to Defense News to, maybe AIN, then back to something in your 20-year career.
There is. It's interesting, isn't it? There's an element of competition, but it's not the cutthroat competition
No,
of the mainstream media.
no, we don't. We even share photographs.
Mm, mm,
We will sit around a table, like at the Airshow China, and we stick the thumb drive into. We pass that one thumb drive around the table until everybody has everybody's photos. And
mm.
you have to do that because there's just no way we can cover the whole show, and we don't care about competition. We don't. Our bosses pay us nothing, so that was with Jane's though. Later, when I got a salaried job with Defense News, I still did that. It was just a matter of brotherly love. You know. But yeah, are you still going to the air shows?
Oh yes, I
Okay.
semi-retired now. I stopped being the defense editor for AIN a few years back.
Mm.
But it's a bit of a drug. The air shows. You think maybe you want to give them up, and then you realize that there's still that buzz there. So I still go to them. There's Farnborough coming up the week after next.
What's that
Um,
like? Is that a decent show or
well, it's a
I've
trade.
never been to Europe.
Yeah, it's a trade show. It's bigger than Singapore and Dubai, smaller than
Mm.
Paris, but the same kind of thing, with four big exhibition halls. What has happened in the last couple of editions is that they've pulled back from being a public spectacle. They used to end the show with a weekend for the public where they
That's always
emphasize
that's a bad
the
idea.
science. Yeah, well, they used to make money out of that, but what's happened is that just before Farnborough is scheduled the world's biggest and best military air show, which is the Royal International Air Tattoo, in also in the
Yes.
UK, and that has become the premier military spectacle air show. So they've
All right.
stolen Farnborough's thunder, and in a sense, so Farnborough has now majored very much so on the trade business to business aspects of the aerospace industry.
Yeah, one of the big problems with some of these publications, defense publications, like all trade publications, is B2B, business to business. And if you buy an advertisement, they'll do an article about your product maybe. I don't know if AIN has gotten into that, but a lot of them have.
I think we had a greater degree of editorial independence on AIN than many publications I can think of. Um,
mm,
uh, we, yeah, there are compromises to be made for sure, but I didn't feel too constrained by that,
hmm,
and certainly we could cover companies that didn't advertise. That was for sure.
mm,
The one thing I did regret was there's so many smaller companies out there exhibiting at these shows,
wow.
second and third tier suppliers. They're small and medium enterprises. They don't
Hmm.
have a PR, big public relations budget, so
Hmm.
they don't grab your attention. But there's
Mm.
some great stories out there, and we never really,
No.
we just didn't have the time
Oh
to
no.
cover.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about the stealth programs of the future real quick. The B-21, everyone's talking about. They think that they're going to build 200 of these things. I don't see them building 200. It's called the B-2021 Raider, and it's supposed to replace the B-2, I guess, and the B-1,
And the
right?
B-1, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Do you know
now
how much? Do you know how much the projected unit cost, flyaway cost is of those airplanes?
the B-21,
Yeah,
no.
it's about $550 million each.
Well, that's nothing. That's okay. What was the
Uh,
B-2, which looks like the B-21? The B-2 looks
yeah,
exactly like the B-21.
no, there's some subtle
But there's
difference.
some, if you're an expert like you and me, yeah, but the average Joe, why didn't
Yeah,
they
it's
just
fine.
build more B-2s if they're supposed to
Well,
be so
yeah,
wonderful?
well, they only built 20, and the state of the art. I mean, the B-2 is getting old, and the state of the art has advanced. But the interesting thing about the B-21, and now we go back to the U-2 in a way, and certainly to the ISR business, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. The B-21 takes a lot of its technology from a still classified high altitude UAV, which is part of the U-2 replacement, built by Northrop Grumman,
Hmm.
uh, first flown way back in 2008, and now in operational service, but still
Hmm.
a special access classified program. But it's clear that the B-21 um, derives from the what I call the penetrating ISR
Hmm.
UAV. It's known um, by most people as the RQ-180 because that's what Aviation Week wrote about it 15 years ago. But I don't believe that is the correct designation. But for shorthand,
Oh,
it's the
130.
RQ-180, and
180, sorry.
yeah, yeah. And so
Didn't
there's
I
things
thought you
like
visited, go ahead.
so I was just going to say there's aspects like the active wing, the conformal antennas. There's a number of stealth technologies that have matured since the B2, which are on the
Hmm.
B21, and we think were maturing on
Hmm.
this penetrating ISR UAV.
You were outside the base, right? Of the place where they're building that, or is this
No,
correct?
the PISR was first flown and developed and test flown at Groom Lake, the
Okay.
famous Area 51.
All right.
And like all inquisitive uh, Black World spy plane journalists, yeah, I've done my time touring around the outskirts of Area 51, and I've been on the two vantage points where you do actually see the base, albeit from a long way away.
Now, do they still have guys up there with cameras? All these people trying to capture the UFO or
Yeah, they do. The Air
crazy
Force,
people?
the Air Force moved to cordon off the best view spot and the most accessible one, and so
Oh, yeah.
now you have to climb a mountain peak, and you're about 40 miles away. So you
Oh,
need
that's
some
it.
pretty. Yeah, I've done it.
See,
Went
that's a
up there.
person that's obsessed.
Oh, there must have been 50 people have gone up. It's called colloquially called Tikaboo Peak.
Hmm.
Um, I went up there with
Peekaboo,
about
or you say
Pikaboo, Tikaboo, yeah.
Peekaboo? What does that mean? Peekaboo.
Well, it's take a peek, take a
Oh,
peek,
take a peek.
take a peek. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You 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 never jumped over a gate or climbed over a secure wall or something. Have you never went that far, right?
Back in the 80s and the 70s, in my aircraft enthusiast days, we did
Uh,
stretch things a bit, not so much in connection with black airplanes, but just fighters
Yeah,
and bombers and stuff.
I've done that a few times when I was in my younger days, and I got attacked by a German Shepherd on a base and climbed over the gate and went to the hospital.
Well, myself and my tour guide got attacked by a HH-60 Payhawk helicopter, as it were, who tried to blow who tried to blow us off that vantage point. Not the
Oh my,
Tickaboo, the other one that they subsequently closed off. But they used to find out we were there because they had surveillance guys at the border who could see
all right,
us,
right,
and we
right.
would report back to the base, and the base would send out the helicopter. So I was by no means unique in experiencing the serious downwash from the rotors of an H-60 helicopter.
What do you think about, just to change the subject a little bit, about the U.S. going back into the Philippines and building all these facilities? And is it just a temporary situation? We left Clark. We really weren't out welcome, and now we're back. Uh, I just feel
Yeah,
like we're being taken advantage of financially. Um,
there's always an element of that, but
I-
you and I, including you as an American citizen, you're back because the new government in the Philippines wants you. I think the previous one didn't really want Americans back.
no.
I really don't know
No.
how that's going to end. The South China Sea situation is complex. There are 5 countries with claims. 2 of them are more aggressively defending their rights, and that is the Philippines and Vietnam. But
Hmm.
Asia, Thailand, Singapore are kind of trying to
Get
stand on the sidelines a bit.
given up a
So
little bit. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think they've given up, but they don't want to stir the pot and so
Right.
much, although they
They
maintain
want to
their
be
claim.
at the table. For no. Yeah.
So how that leaves the Americans, it's difficult to read. I think I would defer to the folks in the defense think tanks to answer that question better than I can.
Hmm. And the Japanese Air Force. There's a lot of talk here in Taiwan that if China invades, the Japanese Air Force will swing into action, come down here and save Taiwan. And I just don't think the Japanese are going to do anything, honestly.
Well, I mean, personally, I don't think the Americans are going to do anything either. I
People don't
just,
like to hear that in DC. The think tankers, they want to sell
well,
their product,
well, sure. But I mean, you know, um, a far off a place of which we know little is
Yeah,
a famous quote from the past. And I just don't see the American public um, supporting a serious
conflict. Yeah.
intervention by the US that costs American lives.
Yeah, and the ballistic missile capabilities and anti-ship capabilities, missile ships. Wow, China has really stepped up its game. Um, they can, these anti aircraft carrier missiles now, they go right through the top of the deck of a ship. What are they going to do? How they, that forces aircraft carriers with 5,000 people aboard. That's a terrible loss of life. Um, I don't know the calculation there, but for
Yeah,
what
I
we
mean, my
gained,
comments, my comments about the American public at large. The American military is now obsessed by the Indo-Pacific. I mean,
it's a new toy. It's a new toy, pal.
well, it is, and I was only having this conversation um, in the last couple of weeks because, as you may know, the U2 is now scheduled for retirement next year, and I was discussing with some people in the business, very much in the U2 business, about the overseas squadrons, the small overseas squadrons of the U2s, which are based in the UK, in
Right,
Cyprus, and in Korea.
right.
And A couple of those guys were of the opinion that if the U-2 was to be saved in any way again from retirement, it would be that squadron in Korea because the Indo-Pacific is so important. I did actually point out to them that we had a little war going on here in Europe that they that they might pay a bit more attention to.
You talking about the
And
Ukraine or? Uh,
yes, yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah,
anyway,
yeah. The issue is, I saw a Northrop Grumman PowerPoint. I don't know if you saw it. It was on my Substack, and it shows one of the graphs shows them attacking China with the B-21s, actually going into China and attacking China, mainland China,
yeah,
and during a scenario on how they could defeat all these bases in China. And I go, do you understand anything about proportional warfare? Because the Chinese have now the right, once you attack the mainland Chinese, you have every right to attack U.S. bases as far, Alaska or Hawaii or whatever you want to do.
yeah, and
That's
they've
for,
got the range to hit Guam and so on. Yeah,
yeah, and that's proportional warfare. I don't know what Northrop, I'll put the PowerPoint up during our conversation. Just that one page, just to show people how crazy. I said that's not a sales technique. That's a suicide mission.
I'd
But
love to see it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I hope to do. I know you're a busy man. Thanks so much for coming on our show. I
Thank you. A
enjoyed
pleasure,
it.
Wendy.
Yeah,
Pleasure, Wendy, as ever, and I hope we'll get to meet in person. I need to get to Taiwan before it's too late.
that's what people keep telling me. They always say, what's your bug out plan?" I go, I don't have one. I go, like, I don't know what to say. My wife doesn't believe it's going to happen. So if I can't move my wife. That's it. You can't move a mountain. But I was also told by somebody in the intelligence community that I would be in trouble. So the Chinese would get their hands on me.
You better go to ground.
Yeah, but it's such a small island. Americans don't realize that Taiwan is only 24 million people. It's the size of Tokyo or Shanghai. So everybody knows everybody on this island, at least, 3 degrees of separation. So yeah, I wouldn't be able to hide for very long. So I guess just wait, see what happens. We'll hope that it's precision strike munitions.
Well,
But once again, thanks
I
so
wish you the
much.
best of luck. Okay.
Yeah, remember
See you
me.
soon.
Write a book
Bye.
about me. Bye bye.